Why, hello.
Hey there.
So we are embarking on a children's program,
Yes.
and you had a pretty funny joke. Do you want to try to deliver it? I'll set you up.
Yeah,
So
set me up because I can't deliver it.
we're hosting like a day camp, and we purchased essentially leadership teams of young adults to be the ones that put this camp together and put the program together. And we overbought the teams, so we have enough teams to like have 200 kids.
Teams for days.
Right? We have so many. And we only have, I think we might be getting close to 70 registered.
That's better.
So it is better. We've had a few registrations come in the last couple days, but still a lot like of a smaller number compared to 200. So I was like, you know what? And I'm rather tired from some of the prep and everything else. I'm like, there's so many like young adults, like I'm just going to like let them take care of it. And then you said,
I think I said something along the lines of, hey, kids, they're totally yours. Which is funny, I guess.
It's funny because the program, did I say the program name?
Yes, Totus
Yeah,
Tuus.
Totus Tuus.
Which is,
so Totus means totally yours.
Totally yours.
So
St.
here
John
you go.
Paul II.
These kids are totally yours now.
Yes.
You have to say it with like an attitude for it to be understood. But I repeated the joke to our kids this morning. They didn't understand until I told them what Totus Tuus meant, and then they thought it was funny. So I laughed my butt off when you told me that joke.
I'm a one-time joker. I'm not good at retelling them, unfortunately.
And you need a caffeine injection today.
I think so. Just too much work and playing, I guess, last couple of days. It's all my fault.
Well, I'm Kit.
I'm Dale.
Welcome to Catholic Hitch. We are a Catholic family seeking heaven and hoping to pick up others along the way.
Small talk.
So the last 2 weeks, our daughter has been caring for lots of animals at what we have been calling the W farm.
Yes.
Not with W, but for the family name.
Yes.
We won't repeat their family name.
Yeah, they don't
That'd be
need
weird.
to be. That,
So the
yeah.
W farm, she's been going twice a day to take care of this Suburban property, a neighbor of ours.
Well,
But they have
it's a large property.
It is larger. It's even larger than our yard.
Yeah, it's probably one of the largest lots in our area.
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah, it's over an acre. I would think. Yeah.
Ours is a quarter acre.
Ours is a quarter?
Yeah. I'd
okay,
say
then
theirs
there
is a half acre. Maybe.
Yeah, it's a half acre at least.
I plotted ours in a...
And we're a quarter acre?
Yeah, quarter acre.
Oh, okay.
We're like on the dime.
I thought we were a half acre.
Nope.
Okay, then they're three-quarter of an acre then.
Yeah. So it's quite large, and they just have so much going on there.
Yeah.
Are you going to engage with me at all?
I'm trying.
I need to slap you. That'll get your blood boiling.
It probably would.
So, yeah, this family's out of town, and they normally have hired, I guess, like professional pet sitters, but they thought they would give our child a shot. And so she has been going over diligently afternoon and morning every day. Morning and afternoon, I guess, in that order. And then I've had to take care of it a couple times.
Yeah, I've assisted as well.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
You've assisted, but I've actually had to go do some of this
I have not
stuff.
had to go do it. I mean, I did take all the litter last night just because I asked, have you taken the litter out? No. Well, how much is full? In the where you take out the scoopy litter stuff and you put it in the thing.
The pail.
Yeah, that. And she's like,
pail.
Well, it's almost full. I'm like, okay. So I took it all out for her because, she's got her bum foot now.
Yeah. She wrecked her foot by biking in flip-flops. And I said, you've learned a lifelong lesson now. Don't bike in flip-flops, as I have told her in the past.
I say it's a rite of passage because I think we've all done it at some point in our lives.
I've never done it. I was scared to death of biking in flip-flops because a childhood friend's mother horrified me by telling us her sister or a friend of hers in childhood lost a toe by biking in flip-flops or sandals. So that disturbed me.
I've miffed it on a bike in flip-flops because I was a flip-flop child. That's all I wore during the summers. And I learned my lesson. Then I started actually putting my sneakers on when I bike ride.
Yeah, it's pretty important to have appropriate footwear.
Yeah.
If nothing else.
Yeah, so she's got a bad cut and bruise and all kinds of yucky stuff now.
Yeah, on her foot.
Yeah, so lesson learned.
Yep.
Yeah.
So she messed that up, yesterday. So fortunately, toward the end of her pet sitting career, I went over while Christina went camping overnight with a friend. So I had to do it like a night and a morning.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, she's been kind of on the job. So she is caring for 2 cats, one of which is geriatric and requires a pill every day.
Mm-hmm.
So she got to learn how to use a pill popper.
Yep.
And that cat takes pills quite well for a cat, because I had to do it the one morning, and it was actually 2 mornings, because I also went when she was at her taekwondo test.
They're very compliant cats.
Yeah, they're very friendly. They just want pets, and that was part of a problem of our, going through this process with her and supporting her with this job, is we were going over sometimes as a family in the afternoon, and the little other children would kind of get to give the other pets attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really nice for the pets, except that we definitely had a confirmation that Jonathan has fairly moderate cat allergies.
Yeah, yeah.
So we had to kind of stop the whole family from going over, and then anyone who goes over has to immediately change and shower before really getting into the house, because he's been set off by the saliva of cats.
Well, you think it's the cats, and we know it's the cats, but then also
cats.
you're thinking that it was their guinea pigs as well.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know if he could have a guinea pig allergy, because he was holding a guinea pig, and it was so cute in his lap. And it's proportionately, he's a small little child, so if an adult were to have a lap kitty, that's kind of the size of this guinea pig on our little son's lap, and it was cute. He was just sitting there and petting the guinea pig. And I know the guinea pig liked it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they have 3 guinea pigs, one of which has to be separated from the other 2 because it's a fighter. 2 cats, as we mentioned. They have a whole tank of fish, one of which is a pufferfish.
Yes.
So you have to feed the pufferfish a live snail, because it needs to mow down on the snail's shell in order to hone its beak.
Yeah, the beak.
Again, stuff of nightmares. Fortunately, when I went, you don't do the live snail every day. You just do fish food and bloodworms most of the days. And I think it's like every 3rd day or every other day it's the snail, and it was never my morning.
Which bloodworms are freaky things.
Yeah.
I don't want to know if it actually is related to the name, or if somebody was just like, we're going to call these because they look like that. I don't want to know.
I don't know.
They're
it's pretty disturbing.
Scary things.
So you get it comes in frozen cubes, I assume, at the reptile store.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like little ice packs of bloodworms. So you pop a cube out in frozen form, and you then drop it in the water, and it immediately starts thawing. And so this, compact bright red cube in frozen form just starts, it does look like bloodworms, starts kind of emitting. There's these long, slender, bright red, tiny worm-like things as the ice dissolves, and then the fish go crazy for them. So they don't last very long.
Yeah, if I can't think of the name of the show, but I think it was on FX. It was the one where basically everybody was getting infected and became vampires, essentially.
I didn't watch that one.
I want to say The Swarm or something like that. But if you saw that show, that's kind of what it looked like.
The Strain?
The Strain. That's it.
Yeah, you watched it, not me.
Yeah,
but
that's what it reminds me of. It's kind of freaky.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can understand. It's disturbing.
Yeah.
Then we move on to other reptiles. They have a tree frog, which is super low maintenance. You just fill up that humidifier once a day and feed it a couple crickets in the afternoon.
Yep.
So it's a hunter.
Mm-hmm.
So the crickets have to be jumping for it to actually
And you
eat
have
them.
to keep the crickets alive.
Yeah, which we killed some crickets by Christina not giving them water. And you can't give them just water in a bowl. You have to give them this weird jellified, I guess it's hydrated jelly cubes.
Yes.
Otherwise, they will drown themselves in the water because they're dumb.
Apparently.
creatures.
So if you've got a cricket infestation in your house, apparently just put a bowl of water out and they'll all die because they're that dumb.
I'm sure it's more complicated than that
I'm
for
sure
a
it
full-on
is.
house. But yeah, if you're trying to keep them in a cage. So we had to go and get more crickets in the midway point, and that is the most. Did I talk to you about the disturbing sound of the crickets? So I go with an empty little cricket container, and I think they gave me too large of a size, but they swear that it's the right size. Regardless, I'm driving back, and the sound of rain is in the car. It just sounds like rain. but it's not rain. It's the cricket bodies.
All
And what
moving.
they've done, they are, so how do you describe? There's a square pipe with a clear top, and it inserts at an angle where a cricket can walk up this black pipe toward the light from the bottom of the cage. So as soon as they all get in there, it's quite a lot of them, and there must be something about the light at the end of the tunnel that just attracts these creatures. So the darkness with the light. So they were crammed up the two little black tunnels and just scraping with their tiny little legs, and it sounded like rain. Super disturbing.
Freaky. I mean,
Yeah.
when you think about the, for I guess these crickets, you don't want to go to the light at the end of the tunnel because that means death.
Yeah, because it's the feeding tube.
Yeah.
So we actually had to shake a bunch out in order to get enough, so that we weren't overfeeding the frog. And I don't know. Can it be overfed? Maybe it just wastes the crickets because they end up dying in the frog chamber and then they don't get eaten.
I don't know.
So then the other thing they have is a gecko. And the gecko, you feed crickets and cockroaches.
Yes. Well,
And
like African roaches.
Yeah.
They're not cockroaches. They're a roach.
Okay, it's a roach.
Yes.
Anyway, pretty creepy. And so did they purchase the roaches at the store?
I don't know. I was kind of confused on that front.
No, you fed the roaches.
Well, yeah.
So
yeah, but
they
originally,
grow them.
Originally, they had to get it somewhere.
I'm sure they got it at the store, just like I got my worms at the store.
Yeah.
So
But these roaches apparently need lots of moisture and darkness.
so they wouldn't survive if they escaped
Supposedly.
the confinement, but they are out in the garage, not in the house. So
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well, I've asked Christina a couple times, hey, have you fed the roaches? She's like, no. So I made her go and feed them one time, and I think that's the only time they ever got fed. And I asked her yesterday, have you fed the roaches? No. Why not? They stink. I'm like, I can't smell anything when I go in that little room. I think it just smells like a basement
So
room.
that brings me to my ultimate critique of this entire process. Now, we haven't even gone through all the different animals and things that they're supposed to do. But, like, I talked to Christina. I got there to drop her off this morning, and all the plants on the front were, like, all dying. All of those potted plants.
Oh, were they?
Needed water, like, super bad. And we had quite a lot of rain last night. So the fact that they were all, like, shriveling up,
I guess
they
I
may
didn't
not
even
survive.
see the plants because I thought I saw there was a big tomato plant that's full of tomatoes.
Yeah, and it's dried up. Like, all the leaves were
was it?
curled. Oh, yeah. So I had
I didn't even notice.
water them all profusely, and I said, Christina, like, you have to water those in the afternoon too. And then I gave her the lecture of, so when you do a job, like, you have to do it well or you're going to get fired. And getting fired in this case means that you'll never be invited back to watch their pets. So we'll just have to wait and see. If you're ever invited back, that means you did a satisfactory job, and that's great. But if you're never invited back again, that means you were fired from this job because it's complete. Like, there's no
Right.
firing.
Yeah.
She also left the water on for 24 hours on some potted plants.
Yeah. Well, those look great.
They look fine. They are growing, so at least the plants put the water to good use. I saw, like, a tiny watermelon is forming, a pretty sizable cucumber, and many tomatoes. So they'll have a good harvest when they get into town. But yeah, that was a big, because,
Right. So
the
we've
mom
got
said several times, don't leave the water running overnight.
yeah. So we've got frogs, geckos, fish. Crazy beta fish. You didn't mention that either.
No.
Did the one fish die yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it died before we even took over.
Oh, it did.
Yeah,
Oh.
so they had multiple beta fish in the tank.
With other fish.
And we have been told, just,
Well,
by being human beings that go into a pet store.
Yeah,
like
they say don't buy two.
they
Don't
say
put 'em
one at
together.
a time, or one beta fish. That's all you get,
Yeah,
and
and they have,
otherwise
like,
they fight.
They have like 4 in the tank, and they basically killed another fish.
Yeah. So when we got the tour, like, the blind fish was pointed out to us, whose eyes had been eaten out by the beta fish, and they were like, he's probably gonna die soon, and he did in fact die before we took over, or he or she. I don't really know how to gender a fish, so.
I don't know. So we have fish,
Fish.
guinea pigs,
Yeah, guinea pigs, which are very messy.
and chickens.
Chickens. So that one was my favorite because I've been curious about chickens. They're gross little
Yes,
creatures.
they
so
are very gross.
I like the, like, pragmatism of having a chicken and getting eggs out of your own backyard.
They're a garbage disposal. You can put all your scraps and leftovers. They'll eat all of them. They make great fertilizer.
And that's something you can use it to make super great fertilizer. I keep asking all the chicken owners in our area if they would process their own fertilizer. I would buy it. I just don't want to process it if I don't have chickens. But no one's been interested in selling me their processed chicken fertilizer.
What does it take to even process it?
So you have to add carbon. So from what I've read, you just
Like-
have to have a heat pile. So you put the manure in like the middle of a tarp in like in the spring or in the summer. And then you have to add straw or grass clippings in. I think there's a volumetric kind of proportionality to how much carbon you add to, I think it's nitrate of the urine and the feces of the chickens, but apparently it makes fantastic fertilizer once like the microorganisms have gone through their process. So it gets very hot while it's processing, and you have to toss it occasionally. But then at the end, when it's fully processed, it's like superfood for outdoor plants.
Okay.
So you could like scatter it across your yard, you could put it in your garden, you could sell it to neighbors. All those are good ideas.
I'll leave that to you.
So they also have bees, but you don't have to really do anything for bees. They said, nope, there's nothing to be done. She had to water newly planted trees, fruit trees. And then, of course, all the potted plants outside. So it's been quite the endeavor, and it's been a legitimate job. So
Yeah.
we'll see if she's ever
Got a
invited
couple more
back.
days. Couple more days of it.
I think it could be. Well, yeah. I guess it is a
couple
couple
more
days.
days. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's been going on. The Winkler. Oop, I have to edit that out now.
Yes, you do. Big talk.
Big talk. So, I was catching up on like a podcast that I listened to, which is Catholic in a Small Town. It's a Catholic couple in the Atlanta area who used to be in a very small town in Georgia and then moved up into more of a suburban location a few years ago. But I've been listening to their podcast for like a long time, and recently on one of their podcasts they kind of talked about church architecture and the difference between some of the old churches that we have here in America and the new churches that start going in. And it just got me thinking about kind of waxing philosophical on the church building process.
Right.
And I think quintessentially what I think of when I think of like a beautiful church, beautiful Catholic church, is I think of European churches. Very few of which I've ever seen, but I have seen a few, and they're
Right.
always
The
quite
cathedral.
lovely. And my sister and brother-in-law, right after they were married, they went for the papal blessing, which you can do if you have been married within the last 4 months or something, and you wear your wedding dress and you get to be blessed by the Pope. So they got to be blessed by Pope Francis, and then they got to see all the beautiful churches, and they showed us all of their photos and all the videos of their visits, all the beautiful churches of Rome. So you just kind of start picturing these places. Even St. Peter's, we did the Easter Vigil during COVID
Right.
lockdown out of St. Peter's.
Basilica.
Yeah, I know I was like, is it a streaming mass? I guess that was.
Yeah, it was a live stream mass.
So it was
For
really lovely to see.
Easter.
But it's how, in comparison to these churches, it's hard to look at the church building process and not feel a little bit of despair. And I'm very intimately connected with the church building process because I'm married to you.
Yeah.
So I get to kind of go through some of the intricacies of this process of building new churches in our area and in any of the areas that your firm is working.
Yeah. So I think what we forget, Europe has been around for centuries upon centuries upon centuries, and our little fledgling country here has been around for 200 years, 300 years now, something like that. 1770, whatever that is. I don't do math. I build things.
It's like a
I don't
little
do
over
math.
200 years.
Yeah. So when you think about it that way, most of the churches that we all worship in are just the baby infant church of a new parish. And they haven't been built upon the same way that a cathedral or even a small parish over in Europe has over all the many years. There is a church in Poland. It was one of the main. It's a cathedral, I believe. And when you look at it, it has a wall that goes all the way around it, so you can't quite see it unless it's an aerial view. But when you look at it, it is like this patchwork quilt of all of the different architecture and capital improvements and renovations that they've done across the centuries. And it's beautiful. When you're inside, it's completely cohesive, and you don't really understand it. And maybe I get it just being an architect. I can see,
well, that's your skill set.
This is, oh, well, this area here, this was added by one benefactor, but this area over here was definitely added from a different benefactor through the years. And so I think it's difficult for us. We sometimes lose sight of the fact that when we are helping in our generation for a church, what has either come before us or what will come after us.
Yeah. And I think everyone has heard that the Notre Dame and all the other great cathedrals of Europe that are very famous, they took generations to build.
Yeah.
And that's generations of faithful Catholics dedicating their life to a project that they would not live to actually celebrate Mass in.
Mm-hmm.
And it does make you think, and I'm sure that someone a historian knows the answer to this question, but where did those people worship in the middle of that project?
Yeah.
They didn't stop going to Mass for generations.
No.
They still celebrated the sacraments, and so they had to be going somewhere. And obviously, wherever they were going was not comparable to the ultimate church that they would build. They were going to build together.
Right. Yeah, and again, most of them didn't even see it in their lifetime.
Yeah, so just the faith that they had in a vision. And what that reminded me of is you talk about master planning and how important that is for a church. Because I think we can, in America, start to think about our churches as generations and hundreds of years long endeavors. And
well, we have to. I mean,
yeah.
That's what Christ has told us to do.
And it doesn't mean that we are going to spend generations building a beautiful stone building that is going to last through, the centuries. It may, in fact, mean that we have to constantly evolve the building that we have and try to beautify it more and more and more.
Right.
But if you have a vision for that from an early stage, it means that you can actually start executing that beautiful vision in a strategic, cohesive way that results in hopefully something that's going to be as beautiful as a cathedral.
Yeah, well, I think the East Coast is probably the best example in the United States, because when you look there, you see a lot of these older churches that we think are very, very beautiful. And if you were to look at the original architect's plans, they were even more beautiful, guaranteed. A lot of the churches, even when you look over in Italy or Spain, you will see, where there's the giant piazza, the city center, the marketplace that was right next to the church, because everything revolved within the city-state around the church. You would see a lot of the bell towers that actually didn't have their spires added on top of them. They were designed to have that, but they never got to it. Or you'll see one that has one spire, but the other side doesn't have one on, what looks like it would be a bell tower on the face. And you have a lot of that over here in the United States as well. Our parish is a great example. When they originally designed the first building, the original church footprint, they had designed the steeple, which we have one of these giant roofs in an octagonal form that comes to a steeple point.
I think it's a six-sided, actually.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't counted.
Heptagonal?
No, it'd be sept.
Septagonal?
Right? Or no, hex.
Hexagonal.
Yeah, hexagonal. Okay. Come on. I'm like, wait, no. Sept is 7. Come on.
That's right. Sorry.
But it was they had designed it to be this glass lantern at the time, and that vision was never came to fruition, probably for financial reasons. But every church, I think, if you've got an architect that's involved in it, they're constantly helping to understand and create that vision. At least if they're an architect worth their salt, in my opinion, they should be pushing the envelope, that the conversation isn't about the dollar, but it's about what is worthy to God, and then we'll figure out the dollars.
But speaking of dollars, we don't live in a prosperity gospel church.
No.
So it doesn't always rain dollars. And
Which is ironic.
God calls on us to pray. But I think that we have to match prayer with action. And we have to discern faithfully like what action to take. And that's part of the process for us. So you have finite resources.
Right.
I don't know if you'd rather answer this question personally, like just what your personal preference is, or if there is kind of a good baseline professional, I guess, perspective on what are the trade-offs if you have a vision, you know kind of what the size of the community ought to be based on demographics, but you have a finite amount of money.
Right.
What do you do because you cannot execute the beautiful church. You can't make it super beautiful, super sustainable, and have the capacity and the place for the programming.
Well,
like that's not going to be possible.
There's a balance
to the dollars. What do you sacrifice?
So first and foremost, it comes back to the pastor and the building committee and the program that we've kind of gone through. So before anything, we are listening to a parish. We are doing questionnaires and trying to understand where the parish is. And for the most part, the pastor has a pretty good sense of that and is going to lead and direct and say, hey, this is our current need. But then part of that master planning is saying, okay, well, we're also hearing that you've got deferred maintenance, you've got a growing school program, or you've got a giant youth ministry that needs to be garnered with what it needs, whatever it is. So we build that program out so that even when we get the whole vision completed, we come back to the dollars and say, great, this is a $30 million vision. We have $10 million. What can we do?
And then what do you do?
Well, that's when we basically have to help a parish understand what is the most priority.
Okay.
And
now, do you guys, I'm going to push a little bit.
Yeah.
So prepare.
Yeah, please do.
You have like professional expertise. You've been trained up with a professional license.
Yes.
You understand buildings at a very intimate level that most people don't. So say on your building committee, you have one outspoken person who has a very strong opinion, and they kind of overtalk everyone else, and it ends up almost perceiving to be like their vision is the parish's vision of a church. But say they're an older person, maybe they're way past retirement, they've been in the community for many years, and I'm not speaking to anyone that we know, I'm just like envisioning this.
But this is not an uncommon scenario within churches.
And in any kind of quote unquote like public forum where people sit together to make decisions,
that's
like
true.
This is replicatable across many different spheres.
The squeaky wheel is the one that gets heard. Yes.
So say that person doesn't hear well, and say that person doesn't see well, and say that person grew up like in the churches of the 60s where everything was very modern looking, and say that is their view of what is beautiful in a mass. Mass is easy to hear, easy to see, and is very like clean.
Yeah, so there's a lot of dynamics that
How
come
do you
into
deal
play
with
that.
I mean, can someone like that start to influence where
absolutely.
the church? So
absolutely, that can happen.
Okay.
And it depends. If let's say that person is a very trusted member of the community, then their vision is going to be heard and is going to be taken on by others as that vision. It also depends on the catechetical state of the community that we're working with. If a congregation of people are well formed, they're going to have a different idea than maybe not as well formed, or maybe I'll put it a different way. If their understanding of the liturgy is contained within 1982, it's hard to get them to think beyond that, you know. So we have a parish that we worked with. Their building was really, really bad, needed a lot of love. Everybody knew that something was wrong. Its ontological presence of the building itself did not speak of church. It did not speak of worship. And so we helped them to vision a building that would do that, renovating the existing building and making a really major renovation to the space. And through the process of that project, there were those people that had a definite understanding of the church that was set within the 1980s, 1970s realm. And so we actually did quite a bit of liturgical education, I guess you could call it, to help them understand what it means to worship, and that it shouldn't be tied necessarily to that aesthetic. And I think in that project, which was just completed maybe about 5-6 years ago, we helped them to vision an understanding of the liturgy that's probably like the year 2000. And it, but that's where they were. And so that generation, that's what they gave to their community. And other generations are going to come in and they're going to renovate it and they're going to build upon it, and it'll change again, over time.
So you guys actually kind of took on the task of forming their
Yes.
And educating the parish itself, and probably the building committee and the strong squeaky wheel voices as to maybe they had an improper understanding of the liturgy, and you helped to correct it in order for them to provide better feedback on their vision for the church for generations.
Yeah, if the community is open to it and that's something they desire, and your architect is capable, and maybe if your architect isn't capable, so a lot of times an architect will come in and maybe they haven't designed churches before. They're just going to say, oh, well, you need X amount of space and it costs X amount of dollars and this is what we can do. And they don't understand the priorities of those things.
We'll throw a tabernacle over here, and we'll throw the altar here, and let's make it at a level to because architecturally that means that we're all united in a whole community. No
happen.
Altar lifting.
That can happen.
I mean, we've seen churches and we've worshipped in churches that were definitely the outcome of that type of vision. And direction.
When that occurs, you have to have a liturgical consultant, and there are plenty in the United States, especially, that focus and help a parish to catechize and also enhance their liturgy. And it comes along. You've got to have a pastor that's willing to do that. You've got to have a pastor that's looking for beauty, and a lot of them are, but maybe they don't know how to express that to a community. I mean, think of pastorship. It's an overwhelming task.
Yeah.
And there's so many problems that come along with the parish community that they're trying to solve and make better. And every pastor that comes through, they are doing that in different ways. But you can't solve
and they have
it all.
Different charisms.
Yeah.
So based on our discussion today, when it comes to looking at a horrible church that's really ugly, there's actually a lot of pitfalls that may have taken place that are unseen.
Yes.
One of those pitfalls is kind of the most well-known, which is just lack of funds. But that isn't necessarily the primary pitfall. The invisible pitfalls can be the pastor. It can be a squeaky wheel that gets their way. And it could be an architect that doesn't actually understand the liturgy at all.
Yeah.
Or who has a very strong opinion about a specific style of the liturgy that may be outdated. Or may be too far into the future.
It depends.
Of what they envision for the church.
Right. It depends on where they're coming from. I mean, that's why kind of our focus in our firm is primarily Catholic architecture, because we speak Catholic and we understand it intently.
I mean, y'all pray at meetings. I was so jealous about that.
Comparatively, I mean, if yes, we can build an evangelical box church. We can help Lutherans, we can help Presbyterians, Episcopalians, but the liturgies are a little different. So we're not going to get it 100% right, and we're going to need to consult with those groups, either liturgically with their liturgical consultant or with their community. Say, hey, is this right? Are we getting this right? That's something that's got to be there. But your architect should have big toes that can be squished easily. It's the best way to say it.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
So they have to be humble. They can't have a giant ego.
Okay.
Because when you have ego, you're building for yourself, and we're not building for ourselves. We're building for Christ. And so if your architect has this vision and it won't budge, then maybe they're not the right architect.
How do you fire an architect? Is there a
that's easy.
contractual
Yeah,
obligation?
there's a contract.
Okay, so
You
you
say,
just terminate the
sorry,
contract?
your vision doesn't work for us, and we're going to go with a different architect.
All right, so final question. I think we've all seen a lot of horrific, ugly churches in our time,
Yeah.
particularly in this United States of America that we live
Uh-huh.
in and love. Like, what do you do if your church is ugly? And we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I think it's really, it's a good reminder that there's hope. And that
Yes.
maybe if you're at an ugly church, you should have hope, and you can actually take, through prayer and discernment, you can take action.
Yep. So I'll use the example of St. Thomas the Apostle in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I think it's a great example. So a beautiful church built in the 1800s by a bunch of Irish immigrants. They all brought the stones for the church from their farm fields because apparently it was really, really stony. And they built it over the course, I think, like 20, 25 years, something like that. Very bright community that did this. And maybe bright's not the word, luminous community.
Okay, yep.
In their spirit. And so they built this church. It was a very large cruciform church, and everything, I think, was going very well, very good community. And then the post-conciliar actions of Vatican II happened. And unfortunately, this church that, when it was built, it was probably a big stone church, had some windows. Then over time, they added the stained glass. Then over time, they added all of the liturgical painting on the interior of this church. Beautiful work. And 1960 hits, and they whitewashed the whole church. They completely changed the sanctuary, move everything forward in order to have the separated altar and all of those things. Then when we were there, some of the historical elements are still there, but and it has a beauty to it, but it's not quite there. It has that old charm of, this is a beautiful church, and I want to worship in it, and it had a great music and all of those things. So the next generation's coming in, they say, we want beauty, and by that they mean that the liturgy should be lifted up by its surroundings. The architecture should help transcend our spirits, so that when it is the moment of the epiclesis and the moment of communion, we are lifted outside of time and space, in with the one holy sacrifice of the Mass. And so in order to get there, they felt the need. They knew something wasn't right. And so they reached out. I'm sure their pastor was a part of this conversation, and they said, hey, we want beauty in the church. So they go and they consult a liturgical consultant, which happened to be, in this case, Conrad Schmidt. Conrad Schmidt is a generational group of artisans and craftsmen that their families have been beautifying churches since I think the early 1900s. And they came in and helped them to look at historical photos of what the church used to look like, and then came in and said, well, we can take that as kind of the starting point, and now let's enhance it for this next generation. And I would imagine they probably, if I had to guess, spent maybe $300,000, somewhere in that ballpark, to do all of the artwork that they did. And so it was a complete repainting of the side chapels, the all of the architectural ornaments of like the smaller columns and capitals and the larger columns, and then in the apse they put back all of the mural work that was in there. And that's this generation's moment to help the next generation in their growth for evangelization. I think that's probably the best example I can give you.
That there's hope.
Yeah, there's definitely hope. And I know from working with that community a long time ago, they have a school that's attached. There's also the concerns about how is the school going to grow. I'm sure the rectory is in need of things, and there's always something that's going to be happening, and every community is working towards that. That's I can't think of the document off the top of my head, but it's a document that is constantly referred to, especially here in our diocese, but it has this architectural element to it that talks about how we are the living stones in which build up the church, where the cornerstone is Christ. And so we all have the gifts that we can give in order to build the church. And that relates, of course, in the spiritual realm, but also the physical realm. God gives us these great blessings of money and stewardship that we can do. And so one of the ways we do that is to build our church literally as well. There you go.
Mic drop. And
Yeah.
you started out tired on this podcast.
Yep.
You got a little bit energized by discussion.
See, I needed questions to get me there. I just can't make this stuff up.
I'm good at interviewing my
Yeah.
husband sometimes.
Yes.
Well, if you have any thoughts about this, or if you want some an injection of hope for your church that might not be as beautiful as you would like, reach us at catholichitch@gmail.com.
May the Lord bless and guide our journey.
Amen. It's Lord, guide and direct our journey, but that's okay.
I'm tired.
I know. I put you on the spot.
Yeah,
You're the one
yeah.
that does the email.